Welcome to this week's piece. Okay, I am absolutely in love with this dresser. I don't even care that it's being held together with string and wire. It is incredible, and I'm so excited to work on it. It looks like it's been through at least one other refinish, and it's had more repairs than I can count, and it still needs about a billion more. So we're gonna get into it. They were using like that little piece right there as a washer instead of as the backer plate to the knob. It's very interesting, the stuff that you find as you're kind of pulling these pieces apart. But anyways, I'm going to go through, take off all the hardware, assess where I'm at, and clean and do all that as I go. All right, breaking it with some thoughts. So this is original hardware along with the escutcheons. You see how gorgeously fancy they are. Now, these pulls are not original. They'll work, but I'm gonna have to do some finagling because as you can see, the way that they have them on, they're not sunk in. These were meant to be inset into the drawer, and they're all upside down. So we'll have to widen out these holes so that these can actually sink into the drawer, and then, flip them over. So they'll work. I wish, obviously, that we still had all of these because these are just stunning, but that's okay. They're gorgeous though. Like, look at those knobs. And then these were on the inside, kind of used as washers, which is so interesting. So I might flip them around and see what they look like as a back plate, because typically that's what something like this would have been, and they were just using them as washers. I don't know, but it looks super cool. And then of course we've got all kinds of spare parts that we probably need for the inside of them, because as you can see, it's being held together with wire and string. So now's the time where I figure out what I need to do to get this thing fixed up again. As you can see, I'm marking the drawers as I'm taking them out. It just makes my life a lot easier later on. And then I'm flipping this guy up just so that it is at a more comfortable height for me to figure out how to get the string and wire off. And since I have it up, I also have a little hand broom that I'll take in there and kind of clean out as much as I possibly can with that. All right, so after taking off the first panel here, I marked it so that I will remember which ones go where. You kind of have to do that on all these older pieces because I like to say they're set in their ways, and if you don't put them back where they belong, they get upset with you, and then the whole thing doesn't come together the way that it should. So I'm just going through and assessing everything. These are all like easy tongue and groove type situations where they're all fitting into these slots, which is really, really easy. And that's what makes these older pieces so great, because they made them so that they can expand and contract over the years. And that's why they stay together for so long, because they don't use a ton of glue. They still do use glue. A lot of times they'll use the hide glue, which I'll be using later on, because it's a reversible bond so that it doesn't break the wood as the yellow glue does. The yellow glue is a stronger bond than the wood itself. So if you've ever done that trick where you glue two pieces of wood together and you try and break it, and it actually breaks the wood before it breaks the glue bond, that doesn't happen with hide glue. Hide glue will let the piece expand and contract, and you typically will have to redo certain parts of it, but that's fine because you're able to redo them. You're not having to repair the wood. Anyways, I digress. I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to throw that in there. So this piece here, you can see that it was repaired already before. There's a lot of this dresser that was already repaired before. This was done with yellow glue, and you can see it's snapped on the wood. So I'm trying to leave this here so that I can clean it out as best I could, and then go as best I can, and then go back in with some glue to fix that. Now on a break in the wood, I would totally use yellow glue, but on like any of the joints or anything that I want glued back together, I would use hide glue. And then this piece right here will slide back in. Again, I'm just gonna go through, take all these off and clean them out, clean out the joints and everything, and then go back in, put them all back together, and then see how sturdy we are after that. And then of course there is a bit of gapping back here. I'm not worried about that. I'm not even gonna fix this. This doesn't bother me in the least. But I am gonna fix this gap here. A lot of times it'll all just slide up. See, they even give you a bit of give in the bottom. This is why I just love these old pieces. We're gonna take out this screw. It doesn't belong here, and then we'll get it fixed up as well. And then I'm just gonna go through, you know, assess everything, get it all sorted, and get her back to good. I can't find a lot of spots where these guys went, because all the drawers still have the glides in there. Like, they're these supports. So that could have been from another dresser entirely, and I always keep them. I always keep these because you can use them on other dressers. Wow, that's going out of focus. So I've been known to throw these in a few other dressers. So if I can't find a spot for them on here, which it doesn't look like they go, they will be in the stash, and I can use them on another piece later. You guys know that a lot of times they're missing the glides because they just pop out, but now we have some. All right, so I have removed as many panels that want to come out. This one back here is loose on this side, but it is fully secured on this side, so I'm not gonna break that out and break up that joint. I'm just going to clean this out as best I can. I'm using a scraper. I've got a smaller scraper for the other areas too. But I'm just gonna go through, break up all the glue pieces, and get everything ready to go to be put back together. And there's another break right here. This one again will be a yellow glue. I'll go back and forth. Hold on, let me show you Okay, so I get asked this quite a bit. This is hide glue. The one I get is by Titebond. It is a reversible bond. The original stuff you had to keep in a crock pot to keep it fluid. This one is a little bit better because it stays fluid on its own, with the exception of when it's super cold like it is right now in my shop. So it actually doesn't like to stay fluid, but in the summertime and spring and fall it's typically fine, but right now it's really hard in there, so I'll have to keep it by the heater to get it warmed up to move in the bottle. But this is the bond that's reversible, so it holds really well. It is a strong bond. It works excellent. It's one of my most favorite glues ever. But like I said, over the years, it will let the wood expand and contract instead of breaking the wood before it breaks the bond. This is your typical yellow wood glue, which is like the Titebond 1, 2, 3. They're all variations of yellow wood glue. The Gorilla wood glue, Elmer's wood glue, all that stuff. I think it all works great. But I just use these for different applications. Some areas overlap and that's super cool. But they definitely have, both of them have their place in my shop at least. So yeah, sorry, just wanted to throw that in there. All right, I'm gonna get back to cleaning this stuff up. So this will be just the first of many, many repairs on this. Again, this is a split in the wood, so I'm using the yellow glue because I don't want that bond to ever come apart. I had to do this in quite a few stages because it required so many clamps and I don't have 50 million of them, although one day that will be my goal, 50 million clamps. But so I worked on the body, did as much of the repair work I could on that, got it all clamped up, left it overnight, and then I could move on to the drawers for the next day and kind of get those ones going and then leave those overnight. So it worked in stages. So I'm just using my scraper to get off all the extra glue and everything. It's more important around the edges where I'm going to need a bond, but on the inner stuff, I was just kind of cleaning up a mess that somebody else had left, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It'll most likely never be seen unless someone's taking it apart like I am. But what's great about hide glue is it will reactivate to itself. So if it's not perfectly cleaned up, which you should do a good job cleaning it, but if it's not perfectly cleaned up, it will kind of go back in with itself on old hide glue. I hope that makes sense. This is one of the easier ones I put back together just because the other side was still really solid. I have worked on pieces where both sides were loose, and so the pieces kept wanting to fall and come out of alignment and do all that while I was working on it. So this one was really nice in that it cleaned up really well and everything kind of went back together the way that it was supposed to in a timely manner. Again, I had these all numbered so I knew exactly what panels went where and could get them in there. And then I just left the bottom gapped out. You can see the little brace there at the bottom. I do that piece last and make sure everything's put up and in, and then I can clamp everything together. And there is a bead of glue. I did it along the inside of everything and on the outside to make sure that it met in the middle. I didn't want it to be too messy as I was putting it in because it doesn't actually need a lot of glue, these types here. They do a pretty good job of holding themselves together if you get the braces and everything like that glued in the right way. Again, for these parts, I would only use hide glue. That way it allows the wood to move and shift. Now that I have the side kind of put together the right way, I'm going to go into the back and make sure that those panels are slid up where they need to go. And I'm using a hammer on parts where it's not too terribly important, but then you'll see me use a block of wood to hammer also so that I'm not marring the wood with the hammer. and I just want to make sure that everything is in its right place before I leave it overnight. So it'll be like this. Like I said, I'm hammering everything up. I have the clamps on. They're not on tight right now. They are just kind of holding things so nothing falls out as I'm hammering. They're just snug, not tightened up. And then I'll tighten them, and then you'll see me move the dresser back onto its wheels so that it is going to be in the position that it's going to be in long term. And the wheels were just a little bit rusty, so I'm taking, good old WD-40 and going around them and making sure they're all lubricated, and then I'll squiggle it around a few times to get it all everywhere. Does anybody else smell WD-40 and just think of their dads? I feel like it reminds me of childhood. And I think it's so fun every time I use it for like the keyholes and anything mechanical. I'm like, oh, reminds me of my dad. Now the top, I had ideas of grandeur, and then as I'm going through, I'm realizing that they're not going to happen. So they used a dye stain on this, and it penetrated super deep. Also, this is cherry, so it's a bleeder anyways and wants to just do all the things. So I initially wanted to keep the top light. I didn't want to do a bunch of oxalic acid. I knew that it would still be too pink in the end, so I had to think about what I was going to do. So while I was thinking that over, I went back to some repairs. For this one, as I said, these screws did not belong there, so I took them out and then reattached the glue blocks that were on the back, and that thing is perfectly secure. And then checking up on all the drawers, I am removing any nails and things that don't actually belong there, taking them out and assessing the damage, and then doing all the glue ups that are required for the dovetails and any splits in the wood, yada yada. Once I got the top sanded enough, this isn't as far down as I can go. This is a solid wood, so I wasn't terribly worried about it. But I have some mellow white, patina green, and some dark khaki, and I'm literally just doing this to see what's going to happen. The patina green is to counter the red that's coming through, and I know that it's not going to cover it all, but I just want to see how bad. Because see, as soon as I put water on there, boom, red, just crazy. So when I do these, this is just going to be kind of a wash. So I got the entire top wet first, and then the wash itself is watered down. And I'm just going in with the brush and rubbing it on, and then I will take a cloth and wipe it back. And you can see that color is already bleeding through like crazy. Now the reason I didn't sand all the way through is 1, because I didn't want to keep sanding if it wasn't worth it, and 2, this is going to raise the grain, so I'm going to have to sand again anyways. So I only sanded to about 180. Now I did not scuff sand the rest of the piece because I know it's going to bleed through, and at least this way it has some kind of barrier with the original finish. So I'm just going over this with some mellow white because I need this to be my base for my painting. And then I will kind of see what's going to happen through the white ahead of time, and I can prepare for that. So the top at this point I know is I'm not going to get the look that I want with it. So what I'm going to do is just give it a light sand to get rid of the raised grain. And then I'm going to go in with this green color. And this is almost, it's the patina green, but I did have a little bit of the white in it just to tone it back some. And that's just to give me a base. And then that picture I saw at a thrift store and I loved it, so I took a picture of it and I just was super inspired by it, and I knew that it would be the perfect picture for this piece because there's so many pink hues in it that even if it has bleed through, it's going to work with that. So this is another one of those pieces, I don't know if you guys watched the mermaid dresser, it's the same thing where you just kind of work with the bleed through that you're getting instead of completely, like, you could completely and entirely shellac this thing and you would be fine. You'd cut out all the bleed through. You might have to do a couple rounds, but you'd get it. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to cover this entire thing up in so many layers and everything like that. I'm just going to work with what I have. So that's my idea with this. So this base is just the sky that I'm doing, and it is just the white base. I did the white, let it dry overnight, and then do another base of white over the top, and then I blend in my blue and my pink together, and that creates the sky. And then you do the same thing on the bottom, and that way if you go to put water in, it's a reflection of the sky. So you kind of do both at once because that's your base layer. And then for these background trees, it's just a mid-tone gray, and I literally just do a small amount of paint This is a 2-inch brush, and I just put it on the far edge of the brush and push down the bristles, so it's working sideways with the brush. I shouldn't say sideways, I should say it's vertical. So, and then every time you reload your brush, know that your brush is obviously going to lay down more color, so when you're working, you know that that is going to create a new layer of trees. So that's what these are, just blobby trees right now. They don't look like anything except blobs, which I feel like is the magic of painting, because the whole time you're like, I'm just making blobs. And then magically, it turns into something. I'm telling you, it's magic every time. I still don't understand it, and I'm still in awe every time. Anyways, so for these lower ones here, I switched over to the fan brush, and that's just because I wanted a different texture, more of like a bushy type texture. And you just kind of find brushes that you like to create the textures that you like and the tree things that you like. And then here I'm taking the 2-inch brush again, I'm dragging it down, and then you go perfectly horizontal lines, and that will give you the kind of impression of reflections again. And you just keep adding those reflections as you build up around the trees, because as you paint things in, you need those things to be reflected in the water as well. And at this point, I don't know exactly where all my water is going to be, but I want to make sure I have them just in case. So I just put the reflections in everywhere. And then I'm picking tones that I like. So I was very inspired by that painting, and then I also just kind of added some that I liked and subtracted others that I didn't like as much, and you just kind of do what feels good. And you know that the darker color goes on the bottom because that's your base, and then as you're doing everything over the top, it's a lot lighter color, and that's when you can choose the actual colors of the things that you want. So I've got corals and some greens, a little bit of pinks in there, and then again I add a little more of the reflection as I'm going on. So for this part, you can kind of see me change my mind into how I want the land to go. I'm just kind of putting it in, and then I don't like the way that it looks, so I'll then go back and change the way that I'm doing it and do a different slope and a different curve and a different everything. That's what I love about this. You can start with something in your head that you want, and then all of a sudden be like, I hate that, and you just go over it, because even just the change of a brush stroke changes what something looks like. So it can be all the same colors, and then if you just change the way that the brush is moving, it changes everything, and I just think that's brilliant. So here's where I changed my mind. I'm like, nope, hate that. This is what I'm doing here. And then I started making them swoop down to kind of go out into the water. Instead of more of a mound, it's kind of sloping more like a beach. But I just think it's fascinating how you can just change it instantly. And again, adding more reflection, pulling down, and then doing the left and right motions. And you have to keep them straight. You can't do waves or anything like that when it's still water, because it then will not look like reflections. So I love this part because you get your base color down, and you could go rocky, or you can go grassy, or you can go flowers. In this case, I did kind of grassy knolls, and it's just because I had the dark base, and then I took a little bit of green on the brush, and you lay the brush the direction that you want the sloping to be, and you kind of have to keep it that direction. You want to leave in darks because that creates shadow and depth, and you just play with it until you get it right. And if you get it wrong, that's okay. You can add in more dark and then go back over with it. I'm sure you'll see a ton of different things that I'm doing wrong, and that's fine. I'm just learning. I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out, and I'm just going through and trying my best. And if I like something, then I'm pleased. And if I don't like something, I can change it. And I just think it's so cool that you can do that. Now, cutting in this path was really hard for me, so I just kind of started placing it in, and I wasn't in love with it, so I got it in to where I knew I wanted it to go, and then left it to come back to later so that I could readjust and rethink how I wanted it to look afterwards. So I just put it in a placement so it's a placeholder and it's there, and then I can come back to it when I feel like I can do a better job. Because it was just kind of frustrating me at this point because I couldn't get it right. And the trees just always make me happy. I don't care what kind of tree they are, they just bring me joy and I love it. So for these parts, I like to really water down my paint and use more of a liner brush depending on how big the tree is. But I can do all these branches. It doesn't matter if they're perfect because most of them are going to be covered up with leaves. So I'm just kind of playing around and doing what I like, and know that it doesn't have to be exact. It just has to be something that makes me happy when I see it. To add the leaves, I knew I was going to do a few different stages on these ones, so I started with kind of a golden base. It's just a softer brown, and that's going to be the base for the other leaves. And the other leaves will kind of change and be a few different colors, but I want the base to be slightly darker than those colors because, as you've noticed, this entire painting is very light. There's no blacks in it. It's very, I mean, all my dark colors are just browns and grays instead of having that really dark black background. So that way it helps give the depth, but it's not such a contrasty image. And you can see the fan brush is super, super easy to make these kinds of leaves with. You just load them with paint and then you're pushing down and moving back and forth. It's super, super easy. And I just love watching them come to life as you add more colors and more highlights to everything. It's just, oh, it's just so happy. So before I go into the highlights on the image, I'm going to take this Helmsman. It's a spar urethane. This one's water-based. Most of my products are water-based. That's just what I feel comfortable working with. So I'm using this to go over the green. The green I am literally just using on the top to combat the red that's coming through, and I'm putting this over it to be a blocker because it's not going to get the painting on the side, or on the top, I'm sorry, it's not going to get the painting like the front has. So you can already see the bleed through coming through. So all the green is doing is neutralizing that so I can go in and color the top to kind of match what I'm doing with the rest of the piece. And then while I let that dry, I can go in and do some of the highlights because I haven't done any of the water highlights where you do the edges around any of them, and I want to make sure that I get those in because that's when it really starts popping. So for this, I almost always use my knife and I dip the tip of it in white is usually the color that I use, and you want to run horizontally. You don't want any curves, anything like that. You want it to be as straight as you can get it, and you're just adding those in. And it's okay if it drops down a little, but you're just making those back and forth motions with no arcs or anything in them. And I do it on any place where you can see the land meeting the water. And it just looks awesome. I love it. I'm telling you guys, watch a Bob Ross. He's magical. And he just teaches you all the things. Literally, I know nothing. This is what he did, so this is what I do. And then for the trunks, I'm just going in and adding a highlight to the left side and then just making it a little deeper on the right side when I'm doing the bark. And so I kind of have two colors mixed together. On the lighter side, I've got two lighter colors, and on the darker side, I've got two darker colors. And then when you move them in, you can kind of do like a little swooping motion to give the impression that the tree is rounded. And you don't want to do this everywhere, obviously, because you've already done the leaves. Ideally, you do this before that, but I sometimes do things the wrong way. But you can always go back in with your fan brush and touch up any places where you need to cover up the bark again. And now I can just go in and fix all the things that I didn't love before. So the path, I'm going to go through and fix that, and how the tree meets the path with its roots, I can go in and fix that. And the little bushes that I thought I wanted that I didn't necessarily want. It's just going over because all the paint is dry and I can kind of fix everything now. Because there's parts of the painting where you want to work on it where it's wet, because it helps blend and it helps make things, you know, look more together. And then there's other parts where you want to make sure your paints are dry so that they aren't blending and that they're very separate. And then to seal this piece, because it is such a bleeder, I'm going to be sealing with wax. I would not do a poly on this because as soon as I do it, it's going to suck out all the tannins and make everything turn that crazy red color. So wax it is. It will seal the piece, give it protection. I can also do all the drawer glides and everything all with the same stuff, and then I won't have to worry about it reactivating the paint, which will then pull everything through. Now, typically I wouldn't recommend this on a top, but since I already have that layer of the spar urethane blocking everything, and then I will also have the wax over the top of the paint finish that I've done up there, I feel pretty good about it. Also, I feel like this dresser's too pretty for anyone to want to put a glass on it. Is that just me? I don't know. I might keep it forever. Once the wax has been sitting in there for a while, I give it at least 30 minutes. Sometimes I'll let it go overnight, then I'll go back and buff it all off. And you can see what I ended up doing with the top and the sides is just kind of did a very incredibly subtle blend of these sky colors just to make it cohesive and match, but also if I had any of the bleed through, it wouldn't have been a big deal. And then the mirror, yeah, you guys didn't know there was a mirror. Oh yeah, you did. You saw it in the first clip. It's fine. There's a mirror, it's done. I did it the same way with the sky colors. I'm just hitting the details with some gold gilding wax. It's on really strong now, but it will be diluted a little bit once I seal this with wax as well. And because I'm out of control and more is more sometimes, I added a gilded stencil because I just felt like there was nothing gilded on the piece front, but the mirror still had the gold, so, you know, it needed some fans on the sides too. So I just did it in these little sections of the panels, and I made sure that it wasn't perfect. I wanted it to be kind of messy. And of course I had to go through my key ring and find a key that would work on these locks. It was missing one lock, which was kind of unfortunate, but it's fine. All of the other locks I got into working order. Some were a little bit stiff, so I added a little bit of the wax to them and that helped. I might actually have to go back in with some WD-40 on some of them, but for the most part I got them all working. There was quite a bit of rust in them.
Oh hi, Taryn here's Elegant Upgrades, and we've got our finished piece! Okay, I cannot tell you how much I absolutely adore this one. Like, to the moon and back, forever and always. This is probably hands down my favorite piece to date. Not only was it fun for me to work on, to do all the repairs and everything like that, but just the overall ending of it, oh, it just makes me so happy. You guys know the part in Mary Poppins when they come along Bert's sidewalk art and then they hold hands and jump in? That's what I want to do with this. I just want to be wherever this is, and I think it is just magical and whimsical and amazing, and it's just so funny what happens to like fall out of your brush sometimes when you're, oh man, I don't know. And all inspired by that painting that I saw at the thrift store. It's just, oh, I love it. Anyways, thank you all so much for being here. Truly, you are just the best humans ever. I will never be able to thank you enough for allowing me to do this and be on here and you guys sticking with me through all of it. I hope you guys all have the most amazing Christmas, holiday, all that jazz. I really, truly just hope you guys have the best time with your families and enjoy all the good food and everything like that. And thank you so much for subscribing and liking and sharing and all the things that you do. A special thank you to all my cohorts who stick it out with me because I'm terrible at updating that whole situation. You guys are just incredible, so thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.